So, what if a company's entire game plan was just buying Bitcoin? And I don't mean as a small part of their portfolio, but as the strategy. Today, we're going to break down how one company is making these massive, repeated bets on Bitcoin, and we're going to look at their playbook. All right, let's get into it.
It's the multi-billion-dollar question, right? We're talking about absolutely staggering amounts of money, purchase after purchase. So where's all that cash coming from? It's not like it's from their day-to-day business. Well, the answer is actually kind of simple, but also completely wild. And get this is just their latest shopping spree. We're talking almost $109 million spent in just the last week of December 2025 alone. But you gotta understand, this isn't a one-off thing. This is just the latest piece in a much, much bigger puzzle. So how'd they get the money? The answer is so simple, it's almost shocking. They do it by selling parts of the company itself. I mean, think about that for a second. They are literally funding their Bitcoin buys by selling their own stock to anyone who wants to buy it.
Okay, so let's zoom in on this one purchase, this latest $108 million buy. Because when you look at it up close, this one single transaction basically shows you their entire playbook in a nutshell. So here are the nuts and bolts. Between December 22nd and the 28th, boom, they snapped up another 1,229 Bitcoin. Now check out the average price they paid here, over $88,000 for a single coin. This wasn't some random gamble. This was a high-conviction, deliberate move, and we know this because it was confirmed by their executive chairman, Michael Saylor, and all laid out in an official SEC filing. But here's the thing. As huge as $109 million sounds, for these guys, it's really just a drop in the bucket. So let's zoom out and see how this one purchase fits into their total treasury, which is just, well, it's gigantic. Okay, are you ready for this number? As of this latest buy, Strategy Inc. is holding 672,497 Bitcoin. Yeah, just let that number roll around in your head for a moment. This table really puts the sheer scale of their bet into focus. Look at the total cost. They've spent over $50 billion to get all that Bitcoin, with their average price being just under $75,000 a coin. But here's the kicker. Even where the market's at right now, that whole stash is currently valued somewhere between $58 and $59 billion. And this chart just makes it crystal clear. On the left, that's what they paid, over $50 billion. On the right, that's what it's worth now, almost $60 billion. That gap right there, that's the whole point of the strategy. It's a massive unrealized gain, and it's exactly why they keep doing this. So the bottom line is this. They aren't just a player in this space. They are the largest corporate holder of Bitcoin on the entire planet. And you know what? It's not even a close race. Which, of course, brings us right back to our first question. How on earth do they keep funding these gigantic buys? All right, let's really get into the mechanics of this super unique stock-to-Bitcoin playbook. It's this fascinating process called an at-the-market offering, and it basically works in 3 steps. Step 1, Strategy Inc. essentially just prints brand new shares of its own stock. Step 2, they sell those fresh shares to investors out on the open market. And step 3, they take all that cash they just raised and immediately go and buy more Bitcoin. They're literally turning public investor cash directly into a digital asset. It's wild. And you know, this isn't just some mindless, constant buying binge. As this timeline shows, they actually paused their buying earlier in 2025, probably to build up their cash reserves. But then, come December, they jumped right back in. And what's really interesting is that they did it even as Bitcoin's price had dipped from its recent highs, which just screams long-term conviction. So we know the what and we know the how. But why should any of us really care? Well, let's break down the ripple effects, because the way this one company is playing the game impacts everyone. For the Bitcoin market itself, this is a pretty big deal. A corporate giant that's consistently buying on this scale helps soak up a lot of the supply that's floating around. It also sends this really powerful signal of institutional confidence. And buying during a price dip like they just did, that tells the market you have a deep, long-term belief in the asset. But, and this is a really big but, there is a cost to this strategy, and it's called equity dilution. See, every single time they create and sell new shares to buy Bitcoin, the ownership slice of every existing shareholder gets just a little bit smaller. It is a huge trade-off. They're betting that the value they get from owning more Bitcoin will far outweigh the effect of watering down their own stock. But here's where that trade-off gets really interesting. In 2025, Strategy stock has actually underperformed not only other tech stocks, but Bitcoin itself. So think about it. While their pile of Bitcoin gets bigger and bigger, their own stock price hasn't actually been keeping up with the very asset they're buying.
And this really gets to the core of what this company has turned into. This quote from CoinCentral nails it, saying they've effectively turned the company into a publicly traded Bitcoin Treasury vehicle. What that means for investors is not you can buy their stock as a way to get exposure to Bitcoin, but it's a proxy that comes with its own unique set of rules and risks, like that dilution we just talked about.
So, at the end of the day, it all comes down to this one massive question. By tying its entire fate to a single, really volatile asset, has Strategy Inc. created the blueprint for the future of how companies manage their money? Or have they just built the world's most audacious, multi-billion-dollar house of cards? That's the question the entire market is watching.